LaMelo is balling out. The problem is the Hornets still have a bunch of injuries, and they're off to a 1-2 start. Is it a good 1-2 start? That's the debate today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. And by the way, your favorite podcast, Locked On Hornets, of course, now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Hornets Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and you can start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, that is. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com. That's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, where you can also find his sub-text information. And I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Doug, I'm getting very Midnight Snacks vibes from you right now. This feels like the thing that you're doing with David, where you guys talk about these games by like heating up pizza bagels in the microwave and, you know, having your hair a little all crazy and maybe having a little tomato sauce stain on your shirt. You look like Midnight Snacks vibe.
I look like I have a toddler who is, just constantly poisoning the house with her germs. So
okay.
That's what's going on. Also, I'm moving this studio back to the home location. So you are getting a little sneak peek at I've got to build it back up over time. But so I'm bringing it back home.
I need to be able to see Jamal. Just give me MASH, baby. All right. We'll see. Okay, Hornets, they go 0-2 over the weekend. We got to talk to you after a 1-0 start, but the Hornets, they dropped both of their games. Just to update anybody real quickly, they do lose to the Hawks 125-120 on Friday. They also lose the home opener, the second night of a back-to-back, to the Miami Heat, 114-106. But it is not because LaMelo is not balling here, Doug. First, you go to the Hawks game. How about 18 points from LaMelo in the second quarter? He has 9 3-pointers hit out of the 14 that he attempted. And then against the Heat, he still goes for 27 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Doesn't hit a lot of 3-pointers, but he's still getting to the foul line at a more than accepting rate. You talk about the 10 free throws that he hit and took against the Rockets, still getting to the foul line, 6 free throw attempts against the Hawks, made 5 of those, 8 free throw attempts against the Heat, made 7 of those. LaMelo, look, it's a red hot start for a guy that we've been talking about different types of ceilings for him, but ultimately the way that he's playing, we're going up there. Like the ceiling is very high, and he's showcasing that with some stability, which is nice.
And he's putting himself in the conversation with other elite guards, and I think getting to the free throw line is a huge part of that. But also, when you hit 9 threes against the Hawks, that's also going to help. But if you look at his usage right now, 83rd percentile among point guards in the league at 37.8%. His points per shot attempt at 130.1 is 83rd percentile, only bested, I think, by Trae Young. Among the guys that would qualify as high usage players, Trae Young the only one doing better offensively. Assist percentage 37.3%. That's 67th percentile. And again, the two knocks on him right now. And we'll talk about those in a bit. But foul trouble and turnover percentage. When you look at a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a little less on the usage, a little less on the points per shot attempt, but he's taking care of the basketball. But it's difficult to blame LaMelo for anything when he is really putting the entire team on his back without Brandon Miller, without Josh Green for one of these games, without Mark Williams for all of these games. The offense really begins and ends. He is the alpha and the omega of the Hornets offense right now. And it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch him be aggressive going to the rim. Yeah. It's fun to watch him having fun again. Like we're seeing him smile. We're seeing him chop it up with the away crowds a little bit. So I'm having a blast. It's weird to say it 1-2, but I'm having a blast.
Well, because LaMelo is playing so damn well. I mean, even with the 10 turnovers against the Hawks, part of this is just missing some of your guys. Like, you think about some of the easy plays to make for a point guard. You're missing a couple of players that allow you to make some of those easy plays. For example, Brandon Miller just being somewhere spotting up for a three-point shot. You don't have him out there, which I would imagine he makes your life a lot easier. And I would think Mark Williams offensively makes your job a lot easier as that lob threat and as somebody that can really help you not only defensively if somebody gets by you, but also offensively. I think Mark can make your life easier. So it is just LaMelo taking care of the basketball quite a bit and being that guy that's trying to make everything happen. What's also interesting, Miles had a really nice game against Atlanta offensively. He got to the foul line quite a bit, so he helped you out. Against the Heat, not as much, but still solid, 16 points, 9 rebounds. You're trying to look for these other secondary options, given that your real one in Brandon Miller isn't playing. So it's the injury stuff again. Like, it's going to affect LaMelo to some degree. I wonder, like, how the numbers balance out once you get Brandon back and Mark too, but to a lesser degree. I just want to know what the numbers are going to look like with Brandon back out there on the court. We just haven't seen them together again, right? It was a conversation this entire offseason. We were hoping to get it right off the bat, but Brandon plays not even, 10 minutes against Houston before he's out, and now will be reevaluated in a week. So we're probably talking about a couple more games, maybe one more game before you consider bringing him back. But that, I would imagine that changes at least LaMelo's play just a little bit.
Yeah, and the Hornets' offense is not a problem right now. I mean, they had enough offense to beat the Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat. And I think I was looking on Cleaning the Glass this morning, and they were 12th in the league in offense. So, and that's LaMelo Ball. I mean, that you throw in Miles Bridges there having a great game, and Trey Mann has been really good too. But this offense is not 12th in the league without LaMelo Ball. And so, but defensively, they're not apocalyptic like they were last season, without some of these starters. But it has taken its toll. They're 21st in defense. And so, I think it's been admirable to watch LaMelo Ball really hold the fort down until some of these guys get back. And, it's giving him a chance to kind of showcase what he can do. And I think wake some folks up maybe in the national commentariat. And hopefully that can lead to him getting, he's already been in the All-Star conversation. He's already in the club. So, this is a great way to kind of get himself back into that conversation.
Yeah, the wins have to come. So that's what I'm a little nervous about. At some point, you do have to put the W's up. And I think that will certainly help with the national commentariat. Another good news thing for LaMelo is if you go to the guards that you would typically compare him to, especially in the Eastern Conference, Trae Young, you mentioned his points per shot attempt. That's very good. It happened also in part because he's getting 1 million free throw attempts, which isn't foreign to his game. But how about Tyrese Halliburton helping LaMelo, who Tyrese is just not playing well at all at the beginning of this year. And remember, it was a torrid start for him that really propelled his All-NBA campaign and held on despite what was a pretty bad last month of basketball last year, last 3 weeks of basketball for Tyrese. So can you give the people enough of a primacy bias to where you establish this foundation and then build yourself a little cushion for some of the cold streaks that every single player goes through, but it's just not as pronounced? And when people think about you, they start to go to the beginning of the season where, hey, LaMelo was going crazy those first 20 games. Like, that does matter, especially when you're talking about people picking you on the All-NBA team or not. It's not like a certain set of criteria you have to hit and you're already in. You still go to the good old-fashioned vote, and we're voting for LaMelo to be on the All-NBA team. So if he can continue this, which this looks stable to me, Doug, especially when you get into some of the other numbers, he's never been a great shooter at the rim. That's still true. He's not hitting a lot of shots, but he's getting there.
He did have a dunk, though. He did get a dunk. We saw a rare LaMelo dunk. Now, he did miss a dunk at the end of that Miami Heat game when it didn't matter, but he did hit a dunk, which we haven't seen very much.
He had one against the Hawks, too, right? It was on the missed three and then cutting, and then somebody found him.
That's the one he hit, and then he missed one against Miami.
Yeah. So But he's getting there a lot more. Like, he's taking a lot of shots. It's just he's not quite hitting them the last couple games. 3-game sample, we'll see. It's not enough to have any kind of trend, but those are nice things, right? Those are really nice things to see as we continue.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, so you look at his scoring totals for these 3 games, right? So 34 points against Houston, 34 points against Atlanta, 27 points against Miami. But then you go to the 3-point shooting, and you see 4 of 12, 33% in the first game, 64%, that was the 9-14 game, and then 20%. He only shot 2 of 10 against Miami, yet he scored 27 points. God, that just wasn't happening last season, right? Even 2 seasons ago, any of these games that he was healthy, it was like, all right, if you've got hot shooting LaMelo, it's going to be a great night for LaMelo. Otherwise, it's rarely going to be like a stellar offensive night for him. And that's just completely changed. And it started to change at the very end of his season in that January period, last season. But it is now carried over into this period. And, give him a center that can, catch some of these feeds that he's throwing. Right. Give him, some more wing help from Brandon Miller. Because here's the thing, like, it's great now. I think if Brandon spends any more time out, if Mark Williams continues to be out, I think more teams are going to say, all right, all we have to do is go and shut down LaMelo. So let's throw 2-3 guys. I think they're already starting to do it, but I think they're going to do it even more aggressively. And let's shut down LaMelo, and we get out of here with an easy dub.
All right, so since we're focusing on the positive of LaMelo, last thing I wanted to say, even with him struggling at the rim via accuracy, what offsets that is when you are getting to the foul line so much. So if you weren't hitting at the cup and you weren't getting to the foul line, well, now you're just not taking advantage of that space at all, the most valuable space on the court. You just don't have anything to do with it. You still are taking advantage of that space because you're getting fouled, and then you're going to the most efficient shot in all of basketball by lining up at the charity stripe, and you're an excellent free throw shooter. So it's not even so much of a baby step. A baby step would indicate that LaMelo has taken like 5 free throw attempts per game. He hadn't taken anything less than 6. So now you really are, even without hitting shots, as soon as you're within 3 feet of the basket, at least, even if you're not doing that, you're still getting to the foul line, which is a big, big, big deal. And it's why we all got so excited when we saw double-digit free throw attempts against the Rockets, and it's continued.
Yeah, and some of that is him playing jazz, but I think some of that too is they're running sets. Like, I mean, there was a set early in that Miami game where they were running LaMelo Ball off multiple screens that ended with Jimmy Butler getting hammered by a Miles Bridges screen that set LaMelo up for the drive to the rim. And I think just the difference between last season and this season is that he is just more concerted effort to get all the way to the rim instead of pulling up for that floater, and it's paid huge dividends for him.
It has. All right, let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Speed everywhere!
Mostly good for LaMelo with what we've seen. There is a continuing problem that we've seen over the last 2 games. Hopefully that fixes itself, but the issue is we've seen this before from LaMelo. Can he stay on the court? Can he not foul out? We'll get to that and other observations over the weekend coming up next on LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to take live bets to the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All the good stuff from LaMelo. It's all good. He is on an all-NBA type pace. There is an issue. When you are playing at an all-NBA level, we'd love to have you on the court as much as possible. Well, perhaps that didn't happen as much against Atlanta when LaMelo fouled out. Yeah, fouled out late in this one, and this was a close game. We mentioned that they only lost by 5. They were trying to come back. They did come back and make this a real contest, but no LaMelo at the very end. And then against the Heat, he had 5 fouls. So you had to worry about that as the game went on. Still 37 minutes. He still paced the Hornets in terms of playing the most, but we don't love to see him flirt with fouling out situations as much as he has, certainly the last couple of games. Now, this isn't a trend because it's hard to continue trends with just a 3-game sample this year. Problem is, we've seen this from LaMelo before, and it's not like we've seen LaMelo play a whole lot of basketball the last couple of years due to all the injuries. Doug, what do you make of the 6 and 5 foul performance over the weekend?
Yeah, so I mean, the Hawks, a lot of people talking about that one. I thought the second foul that they called on, I think they called it on LaMelo against Hunter. I thought that was an absolute horse bleep call. It was silly. But the next two were essentially LaMelo trying unsuccessfully to keep Trae Young from the basket and getting his hands caught in the cookie jar. And look, you can complain all you want about Trae Young's style of picking up fouls, but I mean, the offensive stars in this league, it's not just Trae Young. It's Luka Doncic. It's James Harden. Did it for years, continues to do it. KD knows how to do it. They know how to draw fouls. And if the Hornets, get it, look, if they're going to get into the ball more, if they're going to play aggressive defense, these offensive players are going to try all the tricks in the book. And the good defensive players can keep themselves from committing those fouls, and they know how to stay on the floor. It's really a game management issue for LaMelo Ball at this point. It is up to him, and I understand wanting to defend LaMelo Ball and wanting to, look at this and go Trae Young with the, holding up the 6 when he got the 6th foul. But that's the game. If you can foul out the other player's best team, if LaMelo were good at doing that, everyone would be cheering for LaMelo doing that as well.
Well, and the scouting report's out. This isn't foreign. We know what Trae Young does. He tries to bait you into fouling him, and he's really successful. And that's what he's been doing at the beginning of this year. And real quickly, just the team fouls, it's been an issue because you've seen them not have the advantage in terms of team personal fouls in a game yet. They did tie with the Hawks. Lots of fouls in this game, as you might imagine. 28 for the Hornets, 28 for the Hawks. So there was a tie there. But they didn't have the foul advantage against the Rockets. And against the Heat, just on Saturday, there was a 24-19 difference with the Heat only fouling 19 times. If this is what Steve Clifford would preach about, defend without fouling was a big point for him. And I think Charles Lee feels the same way. It's probably one of the older coaching adages. If you can just defend without fouling, you're in good shape. Hornets aren't really doing that right now. I think this is where Mark helps you. I think Brandon Miller team defense certainly helps you, but you're still fouling at a high rate, and you have not created an advantage in that department in 3 games yet.
Well, that's the thing. If you're the MIG, the most important guy, the guy who's guarding the ball handler, as Coach Lee has described it, then you have more responsibility when it's Nick Richards defending the paint, or it's Grant Williams, or it's Tijon Salon back there. You have more responsibility to keep the guy in front a little bit longer. And in years past, LaMelo Ball would just let that guy go. He would let Trae Young go. He's trying more, and I think what you're seeing here is the conflict between the trying and the sort of skill and game management to say, all right, I've got to understand time and situation here. I've got to understand what my foul number is and keep myself in the game. Because here's the thing, LaMelo Ball, as we just talked about in the first segment, is so important to this team offensively. They fall apart without him. That he cannot afford to be off the floor, particularly in those clutch moments. And so, we can have a discussion, you and I, about what the NBA should be. What they tried to be last season, honestly, they tried to let this thing be a more physical game, less fouls. It seemed like they were going to do that this season too, and all of a sudden they've reverted back. But look, great players adjust to the realities on the ground, and they, if you're on the bench because of foul trouble, you're watching your team and you can't help. And so, I can complain about what Trae Young's doing. I can complain about the NBA allowing it to happen. But at the end of the day, LaMelo's going to have to be on the floor. And by the way, this is the regular season. This is game 2 that we're talking about. Okay, it only gets worse in the playoffs. These guys pull out every stop to win a ball game, and LaMelo just has to – he'll get better, I think. I'd rather see him trying, I guess, on defense than not trying. So I guess that's the positive to take away from the 6 fouls and then the 5 foul follow-up. But, that's going to be the challenge for LaMelo from game 1 to 82 is learning how to navigate this stuff and try hard on defense without fouling yourself out.
And by the way, there wasn't a team foul advantage for the Hornets, but the only foul attempt, free throw attempt advantage they had was against the Rockets. They took 24 to Houston's 20 to open up the season. So that's something to take note of for sure. Yeah, LaMelo, hopefully he can just stay on the floor. That's it, right? Like, that's the thing with what we want to see from our star player. There are issues that a lot of people have with their game that they get better at as their career goes on. I think we're seeing some of those details to LaMelo's game where we're seeing an improvement in those areas. We just went over them quite a bit in the first segment. This seems to be one, at least at the very beginning of this season, that hasn't gone away yet, and we'd love for it to go away.
Yeah, I think the two other things that I've identified are the turnovers, particularly in the first half. I think he locks in a lot more in the second half, but in the first half, particularly in that first half against Atlanta, I tweeted like, this game is a circus. We're not learning anything. And it's because of the turnovers, because the offense isn't very focused in that first half, and then everything locks in. So, that's something to look at too. We talked about the turnover percentage in the first segment, where it's not really in line with some of the more elite guards in the league. So he's got to figure that out. But the other thing that's interesting, and this is not necessarily a negative, but just something I'm noticing with LaMelo Ball, is in the Miami game he had another wide open opportunity in the corner to shoot, and he caught it kind of awkwardly. But he, instead of resetting, I don't recall whether he drove it or he passed it, but he passed up an opportunity at a wide open 3-point shot, and it reminded me of the play that he gave the ball up to Brandon Miller when he had a wide open shot. And I'm just wondering, Walker, if there's just something, if there's like just a little hitch in the giddy up now with we know there's a lot of hardware down in those ankles with how he's catching it. We're still seeing him shoot off one foot. If there's just something where he's getting the ball in a particular way and hitting the floor in a particular way where it's like, nope, not going to shoot that, can't shoot that.
Yeah, I mean, and the reasoning behind that one shot, it's not from LaMelo, but I tweeted that out too, like just kind of real time, send tweet, press send. I put out there like, hey, okay, LaMelo was wide open, passed it up. Is he manufacturing 4-point plays? Joking about it. But some of the responses that I got were it was because he wasn't in rhythm. He didn't step to the line in a comfortable way. And so since he wasn't taking a shot in rhythm, he decided to hit a wide open Brandon Miller at the top of the key at that point. So is this something that LaMelo is doing where there's just been 2 possessions that he didn't feel comfortable, wasn't in rhythm, and he doesn't want to take shots out of rhythm this year. He wants to take higher quality shots, higher quality 3-point attempts. And if he doesn't have that, and he can see an advantage somewhere else where he can pass it, that's what he's choosing to do, which is smart IQ thing. If you don't feel comfortable taking the shot, then I certainly don't want you attempting it. But yeah, it is weird to see that a couple of times at the beginning of this year, where we're used to seeing LaMelo fired it up there. Like that's what LaMelo has done the entire time. So yeah,
and he has done that to some extent, but in those moments, yeah, I just wonder if there's a little bit of an issue there. Also, going back to what we were talking about, I did write this in my Every Hornets Box Score game notes. How low he's keeping the basketball is allowing him to pick up some of these fouls. It's great watching him drive. He keeps it so low, and so then guys are forced to reach, and he's been able to pick up some fouls that way. Just little small, subtle changes that he's made in his game that have resulted in some positive things, and then there's also some things to work on. But again, we caveat this entire segment of saying like, he is the alpha and the omega of the offense right now. It's difficult to criticize him, but if the Hornets are going to achieve the things they want to achieve, everybody has to get better, and we're seeing a lot of LaMelo Ball right now.
All right, so even still, unquestionably a good start for LaMelo Ball this year. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
If it's a good start for LaMelo, is it also true that it's been a good start for the Hornets overall at 1-2 through 3 games? We'll get to that question in just a moment on LOH. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets anymore. Go to Game Time Picks. It makes it easier to save more on sports, but not just sports. You can also save money on concerts, comedy, theater, and plenty more. Toggling a all-in pricing feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, you get seat views where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Last thing, lowest price guarantee. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time?
Game time.
More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, so we had the home opener on Saturday. Something real quickly. They gave out these Carolina Strong t-shirts. If you're looking on YouTube, they gave out free t-shirts to the first 13,000 fans in attendance. All the proceeds from the purchasing of these specific t-shirts are going to Hurricane Helene relief efforts. David Tepper, the Teppers, throwing a concert for Carolina with so many different star-studded guys at Bank of America, and also, so many fans going to it. My Facebook timeline was filled with so many people going to BOA. $24.5 million raised by the Panthers, but also the Hornets right away trying to help out as soon as they could. So really cool stuff from the Hornets. And if you got one of these t-shirts, they're very cool. Carolina Strong. It's the Hornets logo in between the North Carolina and South Carolina dividing line. So really cool tee. Shout out to the Hornets for doing that. That was good. 1-2. So excellent start, getting the win against the Rockets on the road. Love to see that, despite unexpectedly being without Brandon Miller after that glute strain. And you did know you were going to be without Mark Williams. Josh Green has played one game. He's played against the Hawks, but he was out against the Heat because they're still just dealing with that Achilles soreness. Would you call this a good 1-2 start, Doug?
I would. I think so, absolutely. Because, again, they've had defensive struggles, but at the same time, I think they've shown a better defensive mentality. It just hasn't been for 48 minutes. It's they've had to kind of lock in. They'll give up a really bad quarter, a really bad start to Atlanta. But they matched the physicality of Miami. Like, Miami came in there wanting to throw hands, and the Hornets were able to throw hands. And that's not something that you could say for this team very often in previous seasons. So I think you just have to look at the injuries at this point. And it's not just the guys you mentioned that were out, but it's also LaMelo Ball was dealing with a tailbone bruise. Seth Curry had some left knee soreness. Cody Martin, core tightness, whatever that means. He played well, so it's fun. Particularly at the end of the game where he was hitting shots against Miami. But so they're just like dealing with all of these injuries across the board. So I think you have to look at this and say this is a good start, because they have been able to be in both of the games that they lost against Atlanta, which I have a lot of questions about that team, but Trae Young's going to keep them in every game. And then the Miami Heat. I mean, that's somebody that you could see them battling for in the future for play-in or playoff positioning. So, I think this is a good start for sure.
And probably experience wins out there with Miami. I mean, you're talking about what many people would consider the best coach as it currently stands in the NBA with Eric Spoelstra. You are going with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier. So that's a good four that you can depend on, because the Heat, they've experienced injuries last year, and that's what really hurt them from climbing up the ladder in the Eastern Conference standings. All their guys are back. Jimmy Butler had a long injury. Tyler Hero had a long injury last year. So those guys, Terry Rozier, right? So like the Heat were dealing with some issues themselves. Those guys were all there, and they helped propel the Heat to a victory. I'm with you. I think it's the injuries that make this matter. The context with so many guys out, that's an issue. So you're down 40% of your starting lineup right from the get-go with Josh Green and Mark Williams not playing. Then 60% of your starting lineup goes down with Brandon Miller suffering that glute strain. You're still dealing with like back and forth 40 to 60% of your starters. I mean, Micic has been not good. Micic last year, how much would he be helping this team right now, Doug, if we just copied and pasted what we were generally getting from Micic last season, and then we applied that in the first 3 games, I think that would be helping the Hornets, right? If you could just have somebody else step up, especially not being Trey Mann off of the bench. Grant Williams has hit big shots, but Micic just playing like he did last year, that would help quite a bit. So despite all of that working against them, yeah, I'm totally fine, especially with how it looks, too, because they televise the basketball games. They sell tickets. We get to watch them with our eyes, and it still does look different. They're not getting destroyed, and if they do get beat down early, they're coming back and making this a close basketball game. So the way with what it looks, too, the way it feels, that's also different, and I do think that matters.
Yeah, I mean, when they get into sort of their second-level depth, the Hornets, I mean, they're getting blasted. I think one of the worst lineups for the Hornets in that Miami game was the Nick Richards, Trey Mann, Grant Williams, Tijon Zalan, Vasa Micic, -7, minus 175 net rating. They didn't score. They got scored on a lot. So, like, I mean, you know, and you just look across the board, these lineups, these bench lineups, they're getting blasted because, yeah, I mean, the Hornets, they did have a little bit more depth, but yeah, this is not an extremely deep team. So you take away 40% of the starters, and that's going to have some serious ramifications, particularly the Mark Williams injury, I think. Like Brandon's going to come in and help, you know, when LaMelo eventually does cool off, which it will eventually happen. You know, Brandon's going to be really critical to making that happen. But look, you know, without Mark Williams, I think it's going to be difficult to really sufficiently defend the rim such that you can win some of these basketball games. And to the Miami point, like, it was Jimmy Butler, and you knew the Jimmy Butler thing was coming. You know in the fourth quarter when it was kind of close, but they had a little bit of a lead. And the Hornets mentioned it after the game, like every time they got close, Miami would find their way to the free throw line. A lot of that was Butler, or run Tyler Hero off of 9 screens and get him open for 3. And so, you know, credit to Miami, but credit to the Hornets for staying in these games. But I will caution folks that I take heart in these first 3 games. But if the injuries continue, we've seen this in the past 2 seasons. The Hornets having valiant effort games, and then eventually the dam breaks because you can only play like this for so long before you're like, all right, we either don't have the energy. I mean, they're going to have a good break here coming into this next set of games. That's good news. But either you don't have the energy to keep up this pace, or you start to lose the belief of like, all right, we're losing all of these close games. Maybe there's something systemically wrong here because we're missing so many guys. I think just psychologically it starts to take a toll on you. We've just seen that in years past. And so hopefully some of these guys can start to filter back in and we can stop talking about these injuries.
Well, and there's good and bad. Good is there's nothing that is confirmed that's going to keep these players out for even a month's worth of time. But there is a lack of understanding on when Mark Williams will return. Josh Green is in and out of the lineup. I'm a little worried about that one just because
injury.
They're trying to.
Well, what was the designation for the? Yeah, it was injury management, left Achilles.
Yeah, he's got the Achilles soreness, and Achilles certainly scares you because that is a devastating injury if you suffer an Achilles injury. So, okay, great. I'm glad that you're managing that injury. I just hope that there's some payoff soon. I hope that the payoff is Josh Green can give you 25 minutes a night, and you can rely on somebody that was supposed to be a part of your defensive identity. But the fact that he's having to deal with that's a little scary. And Brandon Miller, I'm the least scared about his injury compared to Mark and Josh Green, just because glute strain, said they reevaluate in a week. We have one more game, really, right? Because they tipped off last Wednesday, and their next game will be Wednesday night basketball. So remember, there's this like decent break between their game on Saturday and what they'll play on Wednesday. So we'll see if Brandon Miller maybe just misses one more game and is ready to come back after that. But even still, it's frustrating, the fact that we're having to deal with this again. It's how it's gone.
Yeah, well, that's that's how the Hornets have broken.
Life.
That's life as a Hornets fan. But
it is.
It has been, at least it's been fun watching LaMelo do what he does, and so hopefully that continues. And I think we got something here. That's my takeaway. I didn't know if we had some. I wasn't sure if we had something here, and them being able to perform like this without Brandon Miller and without Mark Williams makes me think we might have something here.
All right, I like that. We'll end on that. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods, and that does include YouTube. Doug's Substack, along with David Walker's Substack, is everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can text Doug by finding the subtext information there. Also, check out Locked On NBA. It's Doug's new gig. They're off and rolling. Like, they did not have any cushion for you to get some breaths in before you started. They're putting you to work right away, which is a good thing for the consumer. So go check out Locked On NBA with Doug as your host. And I'm Walker Mail. I'm a host of Wes and Walker on Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ. Listen to us from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow, talk a little Tijan Salon, and give you other observations over the weekend.